Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your patience as we had just a little technical difficulty before we got started this morning. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. Joining me as co-host is Jose Villegas, the Executive Director of this office. OHR in Conversation is a series in which we highlight social justice people, spaces, and places in Prince George's County, and it is an honor today to welcome District 22 Delegate Ashanti Martinez back for an event. We did have him a few years ago before he was elected for an event celebrating Latino achievement, and wow, Delegate Martinez keeps bringing it. So I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce him, and then we'll just get right into the conversation. Ashanti Martinez is a son of Prince George's County, Maryland, growing up and currently living in New Carrollton, Maryland, attending school at St. Mary's Landover Hills School, and graduating from Parkdale High School. Since his start on Capitol Hill, he's worked for the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus in Annapolis as a legislative staffer, constituent services aide at Prince George's County Council, and now is a nonprofit advocate at the immigrant rights organization, CASA. Throughout his career, he has brought people together to deliver results. Ashanti proudly serves as an advisory board member for St. Mary's Landover Hills School and on the 2030 Leadership Council for the Clinton Foundation. He was named in the top 30 under 30 by 93.9 WKYS in 2017 and was also featured on the 40 under 40 by the Prince George's County Social Innovation Fund and was named one of the 2018 Young Futurists by The Root. In 2020, he was listed as a Daily Records top 40 under 40, very important professional for Maryland. And in 2021, he was named Prince George's County Community Advocate of the Year by Neighborhood Design Center. So first of all, wow, Ashanti, that's amazing. And welcome, we're so glad you can be here.
And before we start, before we start, I also want to congratulate you on your recent victory, re-election to as a state delegate.
No, thank you both so much. You know, it is always awesome to hear your resume as someone who's lived it. It's just like you go day by day, but it is nice to kind of hear about the accolades, but really appreciate the victory last week because for me, it's just affirming that the work that I'm doing in Annapolis is work that my community wants me to continue doing. And so that really does mean a lot.
You know, I saw a post from you about that, actually. I saw a post from you where you said, hey, 4 years ago, I came in last, and this time I came in first. So, and I think we had you maybe 3 or 4 years ago was after that other run. And so can we just start by talking about that? Like, I thought when I read that sentence from you, I thought that was pretty profound. Can you talk to us about that experience?
Yeah, I think my journey in service has been surmised by delay is not denial, right? We might have plans for ourselves. We might have a, goal that we have and we are trying to achieve. But delay in that progress is not denial to where we're ultimately going to go and ultimately whether or not we achieve that. In the 2022 elections, I worked extremely hard. That was my second time running for the House of Delegates to win. And in my district, we have 3 delegate seats. So as long as you come within first, second, or third, you are sent to Annapolis. And for that election, we were really, really close on ousting an incumbent who had been in office for about 35 years. We came about a couple hundred votes short. 6 months after that loss, though, there was a vacancy in the House of Delegates for my district, and I was appointed. And so I really always tell people that you just never know what the future holds. In this work in particular, you want to stay focused on the policy, stay focused on the people, but ultimately the relationships are what are really fruitful. And I think having good relationships with folks, understanding the policy and the people that you want to serve are keys in how you get to those opportunities to serve in the halls of power. But this election cycle, I came in first. And so to me, again, it was just an affirmation of the work that I've been doing these last 4 legislative sessions, that my community not only wants me to continue doing that work, but out of all of the candidates that were running, they liked me the most. And so that really does feel really good, especially representing a community that raised me. This is a community I grew up in. This is my home. And so it really feels nice to know that my neighbors like and approve of the work that I'm doing.
I want to highlight something you just said, talking about relationships as being so important for this work, because I'm going to tell you about something that happened backstage. As I said, for those watching, we had a little technical problem, and one of the things is I thought, I need to contact Delegate Martinez and just kind of let him know about this technical problem we're having. And Jose said, you don't have his cell phone number, Kyla? And I said, no, I feel like we're friends, but we're not actually friends. And I'm saying that because your way, every time I see you, every time I interact with you, you're so warm that I'm like, Delegate Martinez is like my best friend, but I don't have his cell phone number. But like, the point of that is like, that's how you're making constituents feel when you go out, right? Like that we can interact with you and feel like we have a connection and we have a relationship. So my point really is here that what a good job you were doing at making these connections and relationships with people. And I think this is true in the work that we do in the Office of Human Rights. I do a lot of work going out in the community and working to build connections and trust. Jose is doing the same thing. And so can you talk a little bit for people watching about like, what do you think the keys are in terms of that kind of rapport that, I've just highlighted that I know that you've built with me, but that I see you building with other people? What are some tips or techniques?
Of course. For me, I think in order to serve people, you have to first love them. And I'm really, really in love with Prince George's County. I absolutely love the communities and neighborhoods that encompass my district, but really all across the county. And so when I interact with community, when I'm out in public, that is a genuine love that I'm showing to each individual. It is not something that is performative. It is not something that, I have to like gin up or kind of size myself up to do. That is when I see you in the community and give you a hug, that is genuinely me just showing love to folks that I know I care about. And I think that interaction helps kind of lessen the barriers that people have amongst each other. It shows that there's a commonality, a humanality amongst us. And then you can really talk to people about their pain points. You can talk to people about issues that they're having. You can assist people with navigating stuff. And ultimately, folks will trust you with their issues. Something I learned, particularly when I was a constituent aide for the county, was that people don't want to come to government unless they really have to. Most folks want to navigate their problems themselves. Most people want to fix things on their own. But when they are calling an office for help, when they're emailing their representatives, oftentimes you are the last person they thought to call. And oftentimes it is like really, really need. And so trying to open up those channels of communication, letting folks know that I am a safe space to help navigate government with, help talk about problems is a huge part of, I think, why my community feels like they can come to me. It is something that I really do try to emphasize, even with my staff, and just being connected, being resourceful, being open to folks. And that warmth, I think, is what brings people in. I think a lot of our politics is very tribal as well. And so trying to just bring down the barriers is a huge part of, I think, winning people over. We might not agree on all of the issues, but if you know I'm a genuinely good person and I know you're a good person, there's a lot more that we have in common than that divide us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I just have to point this out, Delegate Martinez, that was the way that Kyla, in a way, tried to get your number. She put that question and the way that she was saying, like, I don't have his. So that was a trick way to get your number. No, but let me ask you this question, because I think one of the things that we know, especially in the community, is that you have been very involved in the protection of specifically the Latino community and what was going on with the federal government enforcement. Can you tell us about that struggle, especially in the last General Assembly, to push for policies that are inclusive and protective for whoever, and it doesn't matter what type of nationality, but I guess for that diverse community that we have in the county? There might be
I think it was a delay. Yeah.
Delay.
Ashanti, can you still hear us? Okay.
Absolutely. You know, this legislative session that we just had, I think we have fought the hardest for immigrant communities. In particular, are you guys getting a delay on my end?
Yeah, but keep going. Keep going. It's okay.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys, am I good to go?
Yes.
Yeah, please keep going. Yep.
Yes. Go ahead, Delegate Martinez. We can hear you now.
Let's see. Is it better this way?
It is. Can you hear us?
Okay. So maybe we'll just do no camera.
Sure.
So, if you can hear
so
us,
this legislative session that just passed, we were able to pass a number of protections. Oh, perfect. I was saying this legislative session, okay. This legislative session, we were able to pass a number of protections for immigrant communities. In particular, we were able to prohibit the 287G program. And so with the 287G program, that is a program through the Department of Homeland Security that essentially deputizes local law enforcement to do the job of ICE. For us here in the state of Maryland, we didn't think our local law enforcement should be forced to do that role. And so we have prohibited all of those types of agreements from being enacted here in the state. One of the things that we did in addition to that to help ensure that localities were following the law is that we tied public safety dollars to adherence to that particular law. And so making sure we're putting our money where our mouth is something that I'm really proud that we were able to do to protect immigrant communities here across the state. Another provision that we were able to do is expand some of the definitions around sensitive locations. Last session in 2025, we passed the Maryland Values Act, and in that we had provisions around sensitive locations because hospitals, schools, churches should not be places where immigration enforcement is happening. Those are spaces that folks should be able to comfortably come to and know that they can receive the services that they need. And so we've expanded some of those definitions to include food delivery spaces where folks are getting food assistance, bus stops, you know, making sure that kids and families can go to school and work safely without fear of immigration enforcement. And so a lot of these sensitive locations have been decided in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General so that we can make sure that whatever we're doing falls within the letter of the law. And our Attorney General's office has done a great job of providing guidance. But those are just two of many of the measures that we've been able to achieve this last session to protect immigrant communities. One of the things I will also mention is the expansion of universal representation. We were able to get several $1 million in the budget so that everyone in our community, if they're facing immigration court, can get representation so that they're not in the courtrooms alone.
Thank you. I will say I think we are having a delay, and it's fine. We'll have pauses. So you wait for us, we'll wait for you, and we're going to still continue having this great conversation. I want to just go back a little bit in your journey. We heard you have this incredible bio, right? And my understanding, I think, you just turned 30. So you were getting all of these accolades as a very, young, new, but relatively newcomer and just doing incredible things. I would like to hear about your journey to elected office. Like what kind of motivated you to run, and take us through that process for viewers. So you are muted, Delegate Martinez, I'm not sure if you are actually talking to us right now, but I can see that you're now muted. So there's a mute button at the bottom of your screen. If you could unmute yourself if you would like to talk to us, that would be great.
Sorry, I muted myself because I wanted to move closer to better Wi-Fi. So I've done that. But yeah, one of the things that I have been blessed with is a clear vision of what I wanted to do in life at a really early age. And service to others has always been at the center of what I wanted to do. And so whether that was service through government or nonprofits, as long as I was helping my neighbors, I was always felt centered in what I was sent here to do on earth. Because I got that really early on, I just ran with it. And I've had really, really supportive mentors and family that have helped me just seek opportunities. So whether it was when I interned on Capitol Hill or worked in Annapolis, worked for CASA, I always wanted to make sure that I was doing work that was in service of my neighbors. And so I see myself, even here in the House of Delegates, doing that type of work just in a larger platform. And whether I stay in elected office or not, I'm always going to be focused on how can I best serve my neighbors and how best can I make the communities around me stronger, healthier, better. I just see elected office in this particular moment as how I do that, but I don't know if that will always be the case. And I also don't want to do this forever. I've been working in electoral politics, democratic spaces since I was like around 14. And so being 30, it feels like, yes, I'm still very, very, very young, but I've been doing this work for over a decade. And so my service, in this capacity is what I'm doing now. But because I'm so young, there could be a pivot to something else later on. But for now, I'm really, really honored that I get the ability to do exactly it is that I want to do and serve my neighbors.
Well, you are, and I want to make sure that I get this right, but is it correct that you are the first openly gay person to represent Prince George's County at the Maryland General Assembly? Am I right about that?
You are, yeah. I'm the first openly gay member of the General Assembly from Prince George's County. And after this election, I think I will still be the only. It is really difficult for queer candidates that are same gender loving to win in the county. You don't see a lot of us represented in many different offices and spaces. I think on the municipal level, there's been a better job of getting us into the halls of power. But part of the problem is we don't have a roadmap. There isn't really a recruitment or really support when people do decide to step up. And because of that, it is really difficult to just break through and raise the money necessary to win. Campaigns are like small businesses. And so it's one of those things that with good intentions, you are at a good start, but you ultimately the resources to actually fund your message, to get your message out there to your neighbors and to really run a strong race, you have to have a combination of things that for whatever reason, queer candidates, same gender loving candidates just have not been able to receive in the county historically. And so while I'm really proud of breaking that glass ceiling, I know there's so much more work that we have to do to get the representation necessary in a county of like 1 million people. There should be many more of us representing our voices in Annapolis.
For sure. And I think this is one of the things we wanted to talk to you about today. And, it's just, because my understanding is you're the first Latino representing District 22 as well. And so I wanted to talk to you about this, like Jose and I are interested in what does it mean to be in a situation where you're trailblazing? Because I'm thinking that there's both positives and negatives about being in this situation. And can you talk to viewers about that?
There is, I have gotten used to being the only. I'm often the only Latino or the only Black person or the only young person or the only gay. And so I'm used to kind of being able to stand on my own as my own individual. I attribute a lot of that to my upbringing. I have very, very fond, vivid memories of my mom during bath time telling me, row your own boat, be your own person. That has always been ingrained in me. And so being the first and the only is not something that feels foreign. But I often, because of that, have a role of educating or having to be the face for a lot of people, an entire community that is extremely diverse. Same gender loving LGBTQ community is just as diverse as the Latino community is just as diverse as the Black community is. We are not monoliths. And so coming into these spaces, understanding the role and responsibility that being a first has, I think ultimately the obligation is understanding that you shouldn't be the only and you can't be the last.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I try to focus on is just being the best I possibly can so that in the future, others will be willing to entertain queer candidates and take them seriously. So that others will be willing to look at Latinos that are on the ballot and say, okay, they really do have a path to viability. That to me matters a lot. I've always also been fairly strategic in how I operate. I don't do things by coincidence. It is by consequence. And so I really do try my best to have a strategy when I engage, whether that's in policies that I pursue or if it is in the candidates that I do support. I do think there has to be a level of coordination in order for us to actually perpetuate ourselves into these halls of power. There is a reason that I am the first. It might not be one that we're comfortable with, but there's a reason there's a glass ceiling there. There is a coordinated effort, whether people consciously or unconsciously are part of that coordination, that want to keep certain people out of power. Our Republican colleagues talk a lot more about this and like who belongs here in this country, but ultimately that is shrouded over a much larger conversation about who should have power, who should be in decision-making seats. And I am often reminded that these spaces that I occupied never imagined me being there. The House of Delegates, before it was ever the House of Delegates, was the Maryland Colony Council. It was founded in 1634 or 1635. Our state was founded in 1632. And so this is a very old historic body that has morphed into the Maryland General Assembly. But when it was originally founded, you had to be a white man, you had to own property, and you had to be of a certain religion in order to serve in this body. I don't fit any of those categories. And because of that, I know that these spaces were never built for me, but now that I get to occupy them, it is about us reimagining what that service looks like so that others behind us can see that they have a place here. When I was sworn in to the House of Delegates, in my speech, I made it a point to say to LGBTQ queer Marylanders that there is a space for them here in the House of Delegates, that they belong here, because I want folks to understand that any of these spaces of power in particular should be occupied by the people. And who the people are each and every one of us. It is our neighbors. It is this diverse tapestry that makes Prince George's County, that makes the state of Maryland who we are. We need your diversity. We need your lived experience in order to make better policy decisions that impact people in a real way. And so being the first, to me, often is just a reminder of how much work we have to do in order so that me being this first is not newsworthy anymore. It shouldn't be that I'm, breaking barriers at 30 for being the first ever, openly gay person in 2023. Like, that shouldn't be the case. We should have so much more diversity in the halls of power than we currently do. And it is a challenge, I think, to us as a community to make sure we make that a reality.
Thank you for that, because that's what you just say in terms of how the community has to get involved in order to make it reality. That is essential, right? Now, as an agency of the agency here in Prince George's County to deal with a lot of civil rights policies, not policies, but laws that we enforce. One of our one that we have is dealing with the protections of people because of their transgender identity, because of their sexual orientation. And we always like to kind of address and provide that information to the LGBTQ plus community. As a delegate in they also support the LGBTQ protection. How do you would say that we as a civil rights agency should approach the community, just to kind of provide that information that there's protections here, that you have to work, that you have the right to work in a work environment, that it doesn't matter whether your sexual orientation or gender identity is. What would you suggest?
I think the best way to meet people is exactly where they're at. And I know that sounds so much simpler than it is, but going to spaces and places that we know community frequents. For example, as the only openly gay member of the General Assembly from Prince George's County, and I'm also the only openly gay man of color on the health committee, a lot of my policy work is based on issues that are impacting Black LGBTQ communities, because those are the communities that I'm in. And so whether it's my work on expansion for PrEP access, that's the pre-exposure prophylactics that helps prevent the spread of HIV, or whether it is my work on the Birth Certificate Modernization Act, ensuring that vital records can be updated in a really easy way so that folks in the trans community can have birth certificates that match their ID, so that they can navigate and just travel, and just get jobs and opportunities without that type of prejudice that comes when vital documents and identification aren't necessarily matching, is because of friends. It's because of family. It's because of folks that I'm in community with talking to me about their pain points and their struggles. We just last month, at the end of it, had Black Gay Pride here in DC. I attended one of the biggest events and made sure I presented the organization that hosts the event, the Hamilton Foundation, a citation in celebration of them bringing community together. They had over 3,000 people in a space. That visibility is not just about me. It's about showing them that we exist in places of power. We exist in places of decision-making. And you have someone like you that is thinking about you and understands where you are and is meeting you in these moments. And that matters so much, especially right now when diversity, equity, inclusion's under attack, especially when the rights of all of us are on a chopping block with the Supreme Court. It is so vital and important that we are meeting people exactly where they are. So whether it's a party or a protest, we've got to make sure that we are there so that people understand we are a resource. And that, I think, is how you start to build that community trust, so that people do come to you with some of their pain points. Like, it is really tough to understand that who you are is an aversion from you being employed. It's tough to know that, like, who you love could stop you from potentially getting a promotion or an opportunity or housing. Those are really critical things that people don't necessarily want to come to government to discuss. But understanding that there are folks like you all in office, like OHR, that exist, and meeting them in these places before they need you, I think is often a gateway to how you build that trust. And I think it's vitally important that we are just ingrained in our community as much as possible. You don't know the difference it can make from you just being there and affirming that these folks matter. That means so much when everyone around them is telling them they don't.
Thank you. And going back to the previous question about being the first, I know that besides being the openly gay person from representative from Prince George's County, you also have a position in the General Assembly that I think probably is the first as a majority whip. I believe it is. Are you the first Latino to hold that as well?
I am. I'm the youngest person, the first gay, and the first Latino to be majority whip. And it is such an honor and privilege to be able to serve in Madam Speaker Jocelyn Pena-Melanic's leadership team. She is someone who I've worked with in some way, shape, or form since I was 18 years old. And at 29, she decided that I should be her right hand when it comes to making sure that we deliver on the agenda of the House majority. And so in the House of Delegates, we have 141 members. 102 of them are Democrats. And as you can imagine, it is like herding cats to get everyone on board. But it is a job worth doing, because once we are all on board together, there's nothing that we can't do for the families and communities across this state. And oftentimes we do our best when we come together. Not everybody leaves happy, but I think that's ultimately how you understand we have good policy, is when both sides somewhat didn't get what they want. and we're often focused on what's best for Maryland. And I'm really, really honored that I get to do that work under the leadership of someone who has shaped me. Delegate Pena-Melenik, Madam Speaker, is like a mom to me, and is someone who I definitely look to on terms of how I try to structure my service and leadership. It is really rooted in love of others, love of community, and understanding that our best days are not only ahead, but when we hold hands together and forge forward on the issues that are impacting us. There's so much more that we have in common than we do that divides us. And I can't stress that enough, because even in a big tent party like we have here in Maryland with 102 Democrats, you can imagine the folks from Western Maryland have very different points of views than the folks from Southern Maryland, who have very different points of views from the folks from the Eastern Shore. But yet we are able to come together and really focus in on an agenda that delivers for working families here in Maryland. But being in that position, being the first, I understand that there is no blueprint for me. I am often comfortable now in a position where I'm forging forward, not on my own, because I do stand on so many others' shoulders, but it really is a forging forward. It is not a clear path. I'm often having to navigate spaces and things that no one like me has had the opportunity to do just yet. And so I just take that as a privilege. But it is interesting, being that I was also a freshman last term, and I'm now in leadership. It is a different reality altogether, but one I'm really grateful for the responsibility.
Good, thank you. Now let me ask this question, because just a little bit about, for example, myself, being the first Latino in this office as a director, I feel that I have a sense of responsibility. Now, you being that first Latino majority whip, in working for the first Latino speaker in the history of the state, I know that you mentioned that you've been doing this a lot, but do you have a sense of that you are in a field to do more? You feel like you have to do more, or that responsibility just working with somebody that is the first Latino to be the speaker, you are the first majority whip. Do you feel like pressure?
So I always believe you can always do better. That is a core central focus of mine. You are never above critique, and there's always more that you can do. And that's kind of just a guiding principle of why I work so hard. My work is never done. I also know that because of my lived experience, that shapes my reality. And so we did more this year than ever before for immigrant communities, not because solely immigrant communities had so much needed to do, but because of our lived experience. Both myself and Madam Speakers, we understood the sense of urgency of now. And I think having these diverse backgrounds in positions of power just provide different perspectives, and you will get different results. I mean, even when it came to redistricting, something that the House was committed on, we focused heavily on it because we understood, as communities of color, we can't expect a difference to happen if we sit on the sidelines. Like, we can't be silent on these conversations around our rights and issues. Even if it means Maryland's just sending one more congressman, that one vote could make the difference in terms of a Democratic majority in the House. And so why sit on the sidelines when so much is at stake? I think a lot of that urgency and perspective is because we come from communities that are often underinvested and forgotten. And so now that we have the reins, now that we control the agenda, we are making sure that our communities are priorities. And I think if any pressure is just to make sure that we get it right, especially with a 90-day session, we only get those 90 days. We potentially might be coming back for a special session to work on some other issues. But imagine if we just did the right thing the first time. We wouldn't have to be worrying about trying to find solutions after the fact, with like redistricting and some of the other matters that we might be coming up with later this year. Ultimately, I think, again, the pressure comes from just understanding how much need there is and trying to figure out how best we can prioritize these folks who oftentimes are afterthoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation, and I think we, I know in our office, and I appreciate Jose's bringing this forward. Since in the 10 years that I've been here, we've had 3 different executive directors, and so I can see how each executive director brings in a different. Each person comes in with a different lens, and they're going to highlight and focus on the broad spectrum of our work, but maybe bring their perspective into shine a light on a particular area, right? And that's one of the great things about leadership. And I think you've said the same thing, Ashanti, that I really appreciate, which is talking about the rich tapestry of Prince George's County. We talk about this here, that it is the diversity that makes Prince George's County so awesome and so vibrant. And I really appreciate what you're talking about having having actual representation in government of the people allows that sort of that vibrancy to really shine, and that we all benefit from it. And I think this is something that people can lose track of. I think we can lose track of the feeling, and I think we see this sometimes in political conversation, that my needs are very important, and something about your needs mean that my needs aren't. It's like the whole pie thing. If we're afraid, I think sometimes, to allow different voices at the table, as if somehow we will lose something from it. And I think what you're highlighting, and what we really want to highlight, is that in fact, having the rich variety of voices at the table benefit everybody. Nothing is lost by that.
I think the scarcity model is built in by design, right? If we are constantly fighting for the scraps of this single pie, we won't notice that the bakery is being robbed, right? I think ultimately there is a lot more for all of us than we are often forced to focus on. And I say that because Maryland is the 4th most diverse state in the country. We are the most diverse state on the East Coast. We have one of the highest African-American populations of any state in the country. And we have so much immense opportunity because of the tapestry that we have here across our state. Prince George's County helps lead in that diversity, but across Maryland, I mean, you can find so many unique stories about how people are contributing, how people are making a difference, how people are just uplifting and serving their communities. And I find so much beauty in that. But I often find too, our media and a lot of our politics is divisive, is very tribal, is very, even in Maryland, is very regional. Like, we need to get ours versus them getting theirs. And I have a fundamental belief that those closest to the pain should be as close to the power. And understanding that if we are able to materially change the conditions for the least among us, we can ultimately change the conditions for everyone. And I think that is something that I have been able to see in firsthand when it came to COVID relief, for example. One of the things the General Assembly did during COVID that I think was monumental was they passed a benefit for I-10 holders. These are undocumented folks. These are mainly immigrants that were ousted from a lot of the federal relief. You know, folks always like to say undocumented people don't pay taxes, undocumented people, just take. No, they have I-10s. They pay taxes and don't get any benefits from the contributions that they have. Billions of dollars a year to this country. Our country is founded on a servitude model, whether it is a certain type of visa or whether it was enslavement back in the day. We thrive off of low-wage labor in order to provide commerce and comfort for all of us. And that reality we were able to face by saying, hey, if you have an I-10, you deserve some type of relief because you and your families are also impacted from the changes of COVID. That's just one way that we looked at the people that were forgotten, decided to acknowledge them, understand their pain, and try to provide some level of state impact to help their communities. And ultimately, that helps all of our communities when all of us are whole. I think to the point, again, on the pie, we are so focused on these limited resources, and the scarcity is almost built into our political discourse and the model around I have to have, and if I have, that means you have nothing. When there are billionaires and now trillionaires here in this country that are consistently getting tax write-offs and just so much wealth being transferred over because of the fact that our government has not structured itself in a way to really benefit the people. And this is a much more federal government conversation, but even in the way we tax here in Maryland, we do not necessarily have the most progressives of taxation here in the state. And I think we have a lot of work that we need to do when it comes to just right-sizing the ship. And in order for us to be able to pay for our priorities, we've got to have the wealthiest among us pay their fair share as well. And so I'm really focused on shifting that narrative. I think a lot of our politics has been built, again, on this scarcity model, but there's so much more we can get when we work together.
Thank you. I know we're coming to a close, but I do want to ask one last question, dealing with what words of encouragement or wisdom do you have for other people or the young adults that are running, they considering running for office?
You know, that answer has changed a lot through my service. If you were to ask me this, when I first started serving, I would say something to the effect of, everyone run, everyone do it, go out there, we need you. Now that I have been in these spaces, I can tell you, run when you're ready. And I say that because, for example, I don't think people recognize the sacrifice that it is to serve. Most people don't know that in the House of Delegates, we make $57,000. In that, we are limited, very limited on the types of careers and things that we can do for additional resources to survive. If I do get a job offer or an opportunity, I have to get it approved by my colleagues through the ethics committee, which doesn't always happen because you cannot have undue influence. But as a policymaker who we make policy for the entire state, what job in Maryland don't I have influence over, right? And so it is a thing that they don't tell you about when you come in, but there's a lot of limitations in service. I can't make money speaking. I used to make a lot of money doing like public speaking. I can't do that anymore. There's just a lot of limitations in service beyond just the resources. That's just one I point out. So don't run unless you're ready. Don't run unless you have a plan or a real path. And I say that in the sense of, if it's an open seat, there's an incumbent who has a bad vote that you can run on, there's some type of impropriety on their character, be strategic, because there are very limited resources for our community to really uplift and support people. And I want to make sure that we are taking our best shot, just not any shot, at power. Because that's ultimately what you're asking your neighbors to give you. It's a really weird job where like your performance review is an election every 4 years. And no matter really how you do, it's really how people feel about you. And so wanting to make sure that those that are interested, keep your interest, but you should shadow a legislator or someone at the level that you are in. Get mentors, seek mentorship. People oftentimes, I think, do a piss poor job of trying to learn from the people that they want to be. I think there's a lot of knowledge from people that often isn't untapped. And there's a lot of older legislators, I can tell you, who would love to sit down for coffee and tell you about their 20 years of service. And there's a lot you can learn from that. And then also be really clear on your intentions. People want change. People do not want nasty campaigning. People don't want gutter politics. People don't want the division. We already have a bully in the White House. We don't need one in the State House. Focus on what are the pain points of your community. And the only way you get to know that is by walking your community, knocking on doors, talking to people, showing up to community events. I mean, it is the most unsexy work possible, but you got to do it in order to serve people well. And so for anyone interested, I think do that work. And if you love it still, if you want to do it still, then you should run and have a plan and a strategy behind it. But don't think this is about you as an individual. This isn't about your title or prestige. This isn't about breaking, records. Or I never ran because I wanted to be the first. I ran because my community has needs and we needed a working class champion in the State House because for far too long we were represented by rich folks and retired people. So that is the reasons why I decided to step up. You have to have core reasons for you as well that go beyond yourself. It has to be about the community and the folks you want to serve. And that will translate. That will translate. And that will also hold you when things get really difficult. Because again, this is not easy work. This is not fun. You oftentimes raise more money for the office than you actually get while you serve in the office, right? It is just the realities of it. And just be prepared. And so that's where the strategy comes involved. But I don't think you should automatically say no. If you're curious, just do your homework.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was really comprehensive. And I think I'm so grateful to have you back and to share your story and your wisdom. And, it's just always a pleasure talking to you. And, unfortunately, we are at a time. But I wanted to say for people listening, like, there's so much to learn from Delegate Martinez and also your delegates, like wherever you're listening from, like get to know your delegates. And as one of my takeaways from this conversation is how much the delegates are here to serve you and want to connect with you and want to get to know what your needs are so they can bring that representation back to the House and think about how they can better serve all of us here in Prince George's County. Delegate Martinez, it is awesome talking to you. Everything that you do, as I say, every time I see you out in the community, I feel really happy. I do feel like we're best friends. Jose, I want you to hear that because that's really the honor that you have. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But just the manner, and to have somebody out in the community who's really connecting with people and really showing that care. And I appreciate what you said today about the fact that you are acting out of love, that you love Prince George's County and you're bringing that to everything you do. And that shows. So thank you very much. For everybody watching, thank you for spending your time with us, whether you're watching live or joining us on demand later. You are why we do what we do. And we're so glad that you spend time with us and learn with us. We encourage you in this time, and we've heard from Delegate Martinez a little bit about this, that these are challenging times. And we encourage you to keep doing what you're doing in your own lives to care for each other and the world, to continue to participate in conversations like this one, and to continue participating in civic and civil discourse, because your thoughts and actions really matter. So thank you for all you do to all of our viewers. Again, thank you again, Delegate Martinez. It's been an absolute pleasure as always, and we'll hopefully connect with you again soon. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.